And we are going live on YouTube. Susan Michel, this mic is all yours.
Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts. It is so great to be here as always. I am the author of my newly released book. It is entitled Surrender to Joy: From Suicide to Serenity. It is based on the principles of A Course in Miracles, which is a spiritual philosophy or truth that I have been studying now for 33 years. How time flies when you're having fun, right? I think before I found A Course in Miracles, I was just kind of flying blind. I really didn't have any kind of navigational system whatsoever. Since I have found A Course in Miracles, since I have become a Course in Miracles student, I still vacillate. I still have my ups and my downs. However, I have a clear guide as to how to keep myself plugged in to my God socket more and more often. I think one of the most powerful quotes that I have ever found was in The Invitation by Araya Mountain Dreamer. And that is really how I strive to live my life. You know, either I'm plugged into my God socket or I'm being triggered by the universe. It's one or the other. And when I'm plugged into my God socket, I feel good. I feel the peace, love, joy, and happiness of God. When I'm experiencing an external challenge, what I try to do is just own whatever pain is being triggered within me instead of projecting it onto the world. And I truly believe that's how healing occurs. What Araya Mountain Dreamer writes is she writes, I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine are your own, without trying to hide it or fade it or fix it. Now, as a Course in Miracles student, I know that that pain is not real. However, being in this earthly body and living in this earthly classroom, certain things appear to be real. So when I can own whatever is being triggered within me, what usually happens is I'm able to dissipate that trigger. I'm able to dissolve that trigger. I'm able to get to the other side of the pain. And on the other side of the pain is all the joy that A Course in Miracles talks about. Araya Mountain Dreamer writes in the very next line of this poem, I want to know if you can dance with joy, mine are your own. If you can allow the ecstasy to fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. And that really is the joy that A Course in Miracles teaches us to access at any moment when we're choosing to remember who we truly are. So recently, about 6 weeks ago, I believe, I did a really super cool podcast that just got released today. It's so interesting when you do these podcasts and you're a guest, you sometimes come together with people from all over the world, you know. It's really amazing how technology allows us to connect with someone in South Africa as easily as we can connect to our next door neighbor, you know, when we're all online. So the podcast that I did recently uh, correlates very well with the title of my book. The name of this particular podcast is Finding Joy with Joyan. And the name of the host, it's a young, lovely woman, and her name is Joyan Chan, and she's in China. So it was just really amazing connecting with someone on the other side of the world, and she's just lovely. And so she teaches her viewers to access this state of joy, and she actually asked me questions about my experience with darkness, which was a part of my book and a part of my story. My suicide attempts when I was 20 years old, that's 38 years ago. And then she proceeded to ask me about what I do now to keep myself at a higher vibratory frequency. And it's interesting when I think back to that time in my life when I was 20 years old, 5 years prior to finding A Course in Miracles. I was really struggling with a lot of darkness. I was really struggling with a lot of pain, and I didn't understand what I was going through. I didn't understand how to process these feelings. I didn't know anything about psychology. I didn't know anything about spirituality. So thinking back, I don't think I really wanted to die. All I wanted to do is to kill the pain. And then here in chapter 1 in my book, I entitled chapter 1, Depression Was My Darkness. And what I write here, I spent quite a few years trying my best to articulate my journey. You know, when I first started writing my book, I thought I would just sit down. Well, these were the instructions that another author gave me. She says, just sit down and start writing, and it will be very cathartic, and you'll start to cry, and the words will just roll out of your system and onto the paper, and magic will occur. The book will be written. Well, that certainly was not my process. I tried to write and convey my thoughts and my feelings on paper, but that was certainly not my process. I had to work with numerous coaches, numerous book writing coaches, to articulate the ideas that I wanted to express clearly and accurately on paper. And it's still not perfect, you know, but I feel like nothing's perfect. This is as perfect as it's going to get. And for the most part, I think my book really does convey my story in a clear way. And I think that anyone that is feeling down and depressed and in the midst of pain would probably be able to identify, relate to what I was going through. So I'm going to read the beginning of my book here. This is chapter 1, Depression Was My Darkness. I write, I was only 21 years old, but all I wanted to do was sleep. I couldn't get enough of it those days, that and eating. Sleeping offered temporary relief from my constant cycle of thoughts about the complete mess my life had become. Junk food stuffed down the feelings I couldn't escape from when I was awake. Neither of them served me well. This juggling routine could not improve my outlook and certainly could not improve my mood, but they were the only things that interrupted the constant emotional pain I felt. I was depressed, distressed, and anxious, and I could not remember a time in my life when I wasn't. So that was my period of being in complete darkness. Maybe it wasn't totally complete, right? They say we always have no matter how down we are, we always have that cord that is connected to God. So maybe it wasn't complete darkness, but it was the most extreme form of darkness that I have suffered in this lifetime. And then in the second paragraph, I write, I stood before my dresser and opened the drawer where I had stashed 6 bottles of over-the-counter sleeping pills. I pulled out the plastic bag they were in, walked to my bed, and one by one, I opened each bottle and emptied the pills out onto my bed. I had a glass of water sitting on the nightstand. I grabbed the first handful of pills and swallowed them all with one big gulp of water. I didn't stop to think about my actions or what they would mean. Instead, I grabbed another handful of pills and another until I had swallowed every single pill. And that's how my book starts in chapter 1. And then after that, in my own words now, I remember lying on my bed. On one hand, I was relieved to be out of all this pain. And then I saw my father lying over my dead body in tears. And to see him grieving my death in one way would make the attempt worthwhile. Because I think what I was trying to do is I was trying to connect to my father, who was a very stoic man, and then what happened is I jumped out of the bed and I ran across the hallway to my parents' bedroom, and I begged my mother to take me to the hospital to get my stomach pumped. And it did all work out. She got me into the hospital in time to get my stomach pumped. And then I tried again 3 months later. And then I started the healing process after that. And then I found A Course in Miracles 5 years later. And that's when my true healing journey began. Again, when I think back to what happened when I was 20 years old, I imagine my father lying over my dead body in tears with those 6 sleeping pills inside of me as I began waiting to die. I think that was very symbolic as to how I was feeling about God. I think I projected, these longings onto my father, but what it really had to do is my relationship with God. I think I felt abandoned and betrayed by God. Now, God has never abandoned or betrayed me. God has always been there for me, but there were these pain points inside of myself that I had yet to work through. And I think that's what a lot of us do. We have certain triggers, certain pain points within ourselves that we have yet to work through. And until we can work through those inner demons, until we can work through those inner unresolved pain points, we can't feel our true connection to God the Father. I think God is always there for us. His arms metaphorically are always open. He's just waiting for us to open our heart to receive his unconditional love. But until we can work through our own unhealed wounds, we can't connect fully with him. So the quote that I saw this morning, it's in my book, and it was the quote that Joyanne Chan in her podcast decided to use to market my particular podcast. She quoted me as saying in my book, prayer is our way of talking to God. Meditation is our way of listening to what God has to say. So that's why I say on just about all of my weekly talks here that I start each morning with a meditation, and that's what my way of stilling my mind to try to truly hear what God is saying to me. And I know when I'm really listening to God, he's always full of compassion, unconditional love. He's always so proud of me. He's always focused on everything that I've done right. You know, it's an ongoing challenge to release the negative chit chat of my egoic thought system. You know, the egoic thought system is just filled with nonsense. A Course in Miracles is telling us, well, A Course in Miracles is telling us that love is the only thing that is real. But when the ego, which is unreal, is always trying to sabotage our relationship with God. So it's really important to discipline our minds, to discipline our thoughts, to focus on God's peace, love, joy, and happiness as often as possible. And when we can do that, we're really able to hear what God is telling us. I think it's so important to slow down. It's so important to stay fully present in the moment. And I absolutely love today's lesson, today's workbook lesson, because it just really says it all. Well, they're all good. They're all good. But some of the workbook lessons, they just make a little more impact than others. And today's workbook lesson made such a profound impact. I mean, so yesterday's workbook lesson was lesson 250. Let me not see myself as limited. And then there's a little paragraph here that Jesus writes about sin. What is sin? Sin is insanity. And then it goes on to say how when we see ourselves as sinners, we block God's love. Sin is insanity. It says sin is the home of all illusions. It says that sin is a madman's dreams are frightening and sin appears indeed to terrify. So when we focus on our sins, we get caught up in the guilt, we get caught up in the ego, we get caught up in our mistakes, and we block God's love. We block God's love by aligning with our guilt, and that's something that doesn't get us anywhere. That's something that just delays our homecoming to heaven. And then lesson 251 goes on to say, I am in need of nothing but the truth. And Jesus writes, I sought for many things and found despair. So when we are searching for our satisfaction in the world, we will always, always, always be disappointed. And again, to tie that into my suicide years ago, I mean, that is what set me up for suicide. I was feeling very insecure, and to attempt to get out of those insecure feelings, I sought for my satisfaction in the world. Way back then, I thought that if I could be pretty enough to be a model in the magazines, well, all those internal insecurities would go away. And that wasn't true. That wasn't true at all. So I sought for my sense of satisfaction in the world. And when I got what I wanted and I realized that my insecurities were still there, I decided I wanted out. And this is what lesson 251 is saying. I sought for many things and found despair. Whenever we look for satisfaction in the world, we will always, always, always be disappointed. And that's why it's so important to realize that God is the source of all peace, love, joy, and happiness. And until we can connect to our Creator, unless we can connect to our Creator, no matter what we find in the world, it's not going to make a difference. God is our foundation. And then he goes on to write here, now do I seek but one, for in that one is all I need and only what I need. All we need is God. All we need is God. God is unconditional love, unconditional compassion, unconditional acceptance, unconditional forgiveness. And it's simple to keep ourselves plugged into that God socket. It's just not easy because it's not what the world teaches. It's simple because that's our true nature, but it's just not easy because it's not what the world teaches. All that I sought before, I needed not and did not even want. My only need I did not recognize. So this is the shift in my perception from before A Course in Miracles to after A Course in Miracles. Before A Course in Miracles, I kept looking for my satisfaction in the world. I didn't know how to get out of my pain. After A Course in Miracles, I still feel pain because I'm not enlightened yet. But when I'm in the midst of pain, I realize that I'm blocking God. And I don't look for the world to satisfy me. I look to God to satisfy me. I look to connect to my source in order to alleviate the pain that I'm going through. And it's just I have a new map. After A Course in Miracles, I have a new roadmap, which is much more clear than the old roadmap that I was using when my ego was running the show. So here it says, but now I see that I need only truth. I need only truth. The truth is that God is peace, love, joy, and happiness. And that joy that we think we're searching for in the world exists within us. It doesn't exist on the outside, it exists within us. And that's what it means to live from the inside out. We find that peace, love, joy, and happiness within ourselves first, and then we go into the world to share it. We don't come from a place of lack and look for external things to satisfy us. It doesn't work that way. In that, all needs are satisfied, all cravings end, all hopes are finally fulfilled, and dreams are gone. So we're not hoping for something on the outside to save us. We're realizing that we have everything that we need internally. So that's why my morning meditations are so important, because what I do is I realize that I have everything that I need inside of me. I realize that God is within. Be still and know that I am God. The only time that I can know that I am God is when my mind is still. And that's what meditation does for me. It helps me to connect to my creator. Now, to go back to the lesson here, now have I everything that I could need. Now have I everything that I could want. And now at last, I find myself at peace. And I know that I have gone through times in my life, different times when I have experienced depression. I don't know how else to phrase it, but the depression that I experienced when I was 20 years old was the worst. But there are different depressions that I have gone through, different stages of darkness that I have gone through in this lifetime. And to get out of the depression, really what allowed me to reconnect to my creator was to go within, to stop looking to the external world to satisfy me and to go within. And when I do go within, when I do stop, trying and pushing and struggling, and I can really just be still and remember that everything that I'm looking for in the external world really exists within me, I have experienced heaven. And many times it's immediately after a dark period. A lot of times what happens too is going through those dark periods helps me purge the negativity, purge that stuff that I have hidden in my unconscious mind. And I get to a really, really peaceful place on the other side of it. And then at the end of lesson 251, Jesus writes, and for that peace, our Father, we give thanks. What we denied ourselves, you have restored. And only that is what we really want. I just think lesson 251 is such an amazing body of truth. Jesus is really telling us that I am in need of nothing but the truth. So we don't need anything of the world to satisfy us. The only thing that we need is the truth. And the truth is that we remember who we truly are. The truth is that we remember how much peace, love, joy, and happiness that's available to us at each and every moment. I say too that the 3 easiest ways to plug ourselves into the God socket, when we get caught up in the ego, are forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. Because when we forgive another person, we are really forgiving ourselves. God has but one son, and we are all part of that sonship. So when I forgive another person, I am forgiving myself. And acceptance is to accept our life exactly as it is, right here, right now. We don't want to resist our circumstances. We don't want to try to change anything at all. We just want to accept our life exactly as it is. And that is what is actually going to build the foundation for change to occur. You know, the world teaches us that if we accept our circumstances, we'll stay stuck in them. You know, that's why many people choose not to accept their circumstances, because they don't want to stay stuck in them. You know, they go into a job and they're not happy, so they complain, and then I guess the world teaches on one level that if we complain enough, we're going to be able to let go of those circumstances. But the opposite is true. When we complain about something and when we resist our circumstances, we actually stay stuck in those circumstances, because, you know, we all have a certain vibratory frequency that we're kind of connecting to. And when we resist our circumstances, our vibration is low. So if we're vibrating to a lower frequency, we stay stuck in that lower frequency. That's why Carl Jung says, what we resist persists. What we resist persists, because when we're resisting something, our vibration is low. So we're basically staying stuck in that low vibratory frequency. But when we start to accept our circumstances, what happens is our vibratory frequency raises itself. And when we start to raise our vibrational frequency, we go to a higher dimension, and we start to attract more loving circumstances to us. So that's why it's so important to accept our situation completely and totally just the way it is, because love can transform all things. So if we can love even the challenging situations in our life, we will see our life start to shift, and we will see more loving circumstances attracting themselves to us. So that's why forgiveness is so important. Acceptance is so important. Well, what do these two qualities have in common? Forgiveness allows us to love. When we forgive, we release guilt. When we forgive, we forgive our brother, but since God has but one son and we are all part of the sonship, we're also forgiving ourselves. Number two is acceptance. Accept our life circumstances. Do not resist, accept. And as we start to accept everything exactly as it is, we will see our life transform. You know, even as I'm speaking about it now, I can remember times in my life, you know, where I started to accept everything exactly as it was. I stopped resisting, I started accepting, and I saw transformation take place in my life. There was this one really dark period I was going through, and I was living at home with my father years ago. And when I first moved back into his house, I was just so unhappy about my situation, living with my father again. I think in my 30s, you know, I couldn't believe I was back home at my dad's house. I had been going through a very challenging time. And then what happened happened as I started accepting that I was back with my father for a reason, as I started accepting that there was something that my soul still needed to learn by moving back in with him, everything started to shift. And I started enjoying the time that I spent with him. I started working on forgiving him. I started working on forgiving myself. I started, it was one of the happiest times in my life, actually. I started taking these long walks in nature. I started meditating, doing yoga, working out. I mean, it was really wonderful. And then what happened, because I went from resistance to acceptance, and I was now creating a foundation of joy for myself, then my life started to shift and I went back into the world. I think that was the point where I moved back to Manhattan, went back into a great job, met this great man, and my life started all coming together on the outside. But before my life started coming together on the outside, I created a solid foundation on the inside. So the external world just reflected back to me the joy that I had created internally. That's how life works. We shift first on the inside, and then ultimately the world reflects that back to me. But it does not happen the other way around. If we are coming from a place of lack and we're looking for the world to satisfy us because we feel so insecure on the inside, it's never going to happen, because the external world is just a mirror. All life does is mirrors back to us what we are feeling internally. So I had created an internal self that was happy, that was content, that was satisfied. And I'll tell you something else about that time in my life, reflecting back on it. I was living with my father. I was not working. I had over $60,000 of credit card debt at that time. And it didn't matter, the fact that I didn't have a job, the fact that I didn't have a boyfriend, the fact that I had very little money and over $60,000 worth of debt. It was still one of the happiest times of my life, because I found a way to plug myself into my God socket. And just as lesson 251 states, I am in need of nothing but the truth. The truth shall set us free, no matter what we're experiencing in the world. When we can find a way to plug ourselves into the God socket, and it's not even finding a way to plug ourselves into the God socket. It's just remembering who we really are, remembering that we are a part of God, remembering that all of God's strength and power and joy is available to us at each and every moment. God is the ocean, we are a wave, but the whole power of the ocean is available to us at any moment we choose to accept it, and not only does it bring us joy, it brings God incredible amount of joy. It says in A Course in Miracles that God needs us as much as we need him. So when we allow his energy to flow through us, we are blissfully happy, and so is he. It's a win-win. God wants to extend his love to us, and God wants to extend his love through us to the world. And that's the only thing that will make us happy. So it's a win-win. It's the only thing that will make us happy. And it's also the only thing that will make God happy when we're able to accept his love, accept our life and accept his love. And then the third quality that connects us to source energy, that keeps us in sync with who we really are, is gratitude. So those are the three qualities that get us home to heaven as fast as possible. Forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. And gratitude is just a quality of being grateful for everything that we are, being grateful for being a part of God, for recognizing the truth of who we are and being grateful. So again, this is gonna elevate our vibratory frequency. This is gonna raise our energetic frequency from a lower vibration to a higher vibration. It's gratitude is just a place of unconditional love. When we're grateful, I mean, I see in children sometimes the difference between children that feel entitled to things and children that are truly grateful for things. I'm just so drawn to children that are grateful, and so kind of repulsed, not drawn to children that feel entitled. And I don't blame the children for feeling entitled. There's just something in them that is unsettled, that they haven't worked their way through. So sometimes little kids, choose not to be grateful for things, and I can see them suffering. I can see them suffering when they're not grateful for things. I had an experience with a little boy not so long ago, and I was trying to pick out a present for him, but no matter what I chose, no matter what I did to find the perfect present for this little boy, he really didn't want the present. A part of him, I guess, did, because he had chosen this particular jacket prior to his birthday. But then when I went to the shopping mall to actually find the jacket that he had picked out ahead of time, he just didn't want to find what part of the store it was in. He didn't want to try it on. He I don't know, something was going on inside of him that was not good, and he was not grateful for my efforts to find him his birthday gift. And I'm not blaming him. I'm trying not to judge him, but I'm just realizing that when we're not grateful for things, it just lowers our energy. When we can really open our hearts and be grateful for things, our energy raises itself. And so that's why those three qualities that are so important to keep ourselves plugged into the God socket is our forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. So on that note, I think I have run out of topics of conversation for today's talk, but I am so grateful to be here with you. My book is available on Amazon for only $12.96. Surrender to Joy: From Suicide to Serenity, Teaching the Transformational Truth of A Course in Miracles by Michel. My website is surrendertojoy.net, where you can learn more about me. And I will end with the introduction of A Course in Miracles, which states, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And what this means is the only thing that is real is the love. And I am so grateful for that. I am so grateful for A Course in Miracles. I'm so grateful to be here in Pal Talk. And I love you all. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Susan Michel. Beautiful sharing, and I'm grateful for you too. All right.